Let's talk about exactly why Israel is destroying cemeteries inside of Gaza and what that means in the larger context of genocide. CNN recently released a report that the IOF has destroyed at least 16 cemeteries all across the Gaza Strip. And as they reported, the IOF usually goes out of their way to destroy these cemeteries, driving through them, bulldozing them, and setting up their military bases on top of them. Literally setting up their military bases on top of the bodies of dead Palestinians to kill more Palestinians. And most of the time, they're not just destroying the cemeteries, they're confiscating bodies too. And if those bodies are ever returned, those bodies are often returned missing pieces. And like with many things with the IOF, what can seem like reckless and wanton cruelty and destruction is actually entirely intentional. This practice of destroying Palestinian cemeteries and graves and desecrating Palestinian bodies is what's called necroviolence, or violence against the dead. And this is a key part of how Israel dehumanizes Palestinians in life and in death. And it's not unique to this conflict, it's been going on for decades. It's worth noting that despite the fact that cemeteries are protected under international law, the Geneva Genocide Convention actually doesn't list the destruction of cemeteries and other cultural sites as an act of genocide. However, I would argue that that is clearly an indicator of genocidal intent. For example, during the breakup of Yugoslavia and the Bosnian Wars in the early 90s, Bosnian Muslims were the victim of a genocidal campaign by Serb Bosnians that culminated in the massacre of Srebrenica. A key part of that campaign was the systematic destruction of mosques and Islamic cemeteries in order to erase any signs of Muslim culture from Bosnia and create a Serbian ethno-state. Similarly, in the aftermath of the Armenian genocide, Azerbaijan engaged in a concerted campaign to destroy Armenian cemeteries that dated back to the medieval ages. And this is all to support a narrative that Armenians were never in the region in the first place, which is something that Azerbaijan repeats to this very day. Because if you think about it, in many ways, cemeteries are communities of the dead, and they represent a much more permanent connection between a people and their land. One of Israel's favorite narratives that they love to put out is that there was no one in Palestine when they arrived, that the land was just open and free for the taking when Israel came. So any sign that Palestinians were ever here, like mosques or cemeteries or other monuments, is a direct challenge to that narrative. Ultimately, the destruction of cemeteries erases a key connection between a people and their land and creates a clean slate for the settler colonial regime to build on top of. And building on top of them is exactly what Israel is already making plans to do. Just this past weekend, Netanyahu's Likud party held an Israel Victory Conference in which they are actively discussing resettlement plans for Gaza. And Israeli real estate companies are already advertising beachfront properties inside Gaza. Like, these people are quite literally singing and dancing as children are being bombed, and they're actively drawing the maps for settlements on top of existing cities. So that all should tell you what their real intentions are. And if you're in the West and you're watching this and you're rightfully pissed off about our government's support for all of this, then please take some time out of your day, call your reps, send an email to them, maybe make a donation to the UNRWA, because without the active engagement and participation of all of us, Israel will be more than happy to rewrite history for generations to come. Free Palestine.